Welcome into the Week 5 NFL podcast on the Betting the Pitch Podcast Network. I'm your host at @the_real_G Warner, joined as always by _Schnicker on Twitter. We went 0-2, our first losing week this entire season. We were 5-1 heading into it. So I guess 5-3 on the year, still making everyone money. I'm disappointed, but I'm happy with our start so far at _Schnicker on Twitter. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't our best week, but that's why it's a long game. It's a long season, and I think we started pretty well. So I'm
Five
not
and one, hard to be better
too
than that. I
disappointed.
was undefeated on my season heading
Yeah.
into last week. Unfortunately, that is now just one of those streaks that has to end. But it's time to start another one. We're going to go through the 4 primetime games. We're going to do a 6-pack of games, unless we just go really quick and get through everything. But that leaves us with one snake draft, always started by at @Schnicker to pick which game he wants to talk about the most. Then we'll finish up with best bets end of show. If you're not following the podcast, please do so. Subscribe on YouTube at @the_real_G Warner. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. It's huge for the search rankings, and we'll make sure that we are coming to you every week that we plan to for the rest of the season and for the rest of our natural lives. We'll start on Thursday Night Football with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers visiting the Atlanta Falcons. Total here is 43.5, and the Falcons are a 1.5-point favorite. It has moved from Tampa Bay, a 2-point favorite, down to 1.5, or excuse me, 2-point underdog down to 1.5. It seems like there's a little bit more faith on the Bucks, potentially, I guess, shedding that Tampa Bay Buccaneers skin that they had on for the Denver Broncos with their win last weekend. What do we think about the Falcons? I'd like to start there.
Well, I mean, all my whole Twitter timeline was just full of people giving up on Kyle Pitts again, which I didn't know we had bought back into Kyle Pitts, but
Yeah.
just again giving up on that tight end with all the talent he has. The Falcons, I mean, it's more than just Kyle Pitts though. Like Bijan Robinson isn't looking. Like Tyler Algier outgained him on Sunday. The Saints have a good defense, but again, like it just doesn't seem like it always goes back to the quarterback. That's where we're always going to look to start. Kirk Cousins cannot be 100% healthy. We don't know if he'll ever be, pre-Achilles injury Kirk Cousins. Um, they get the special teams touchdown off the Shaheed muffed punt. They had another
Great,
defensive
great for the
touchdown.
under. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, not great for the under. Nor, I mean, if you're a Saints better, you can look back to those miscues and say, okay, that's the difference between a winning ticket and a losing ticket. Um,
You're
and then
also
you go,
forgetting you're also forgetting another defensive touchdown.
that's right. It was a pick six, that's right, wasn't it?
Not great for the under either,
No.
I must say. And it
And
still
Young
almost went
Waiku,
under. It still almost went under, by the way. It was like if there's a stop on like a 4th down conversion late in the game for the Saints to take the lead. I do think the Saints covered the closing spread plus 2.5 with a nice 2-point loss,
closing
but
spread, they did. Most of
doesn't
that
happen
week,
very often.
though,
Yeah.
yeah. Again, that's when we're getting into that conversation about do you just take money line? And in this case, it wouldn't have mattered. But we're seeing more and more games and land on 1 and 2 and 3 is not the key number that we thought it once was just a couple of years back. Um, this offense for the Falcons is just kind of plotting. There's no real dynamic explosiveness to it. And that's my biggest takeaway. The defense, the secondary is, I think, is elite, but it's just not all clicking yet. Do you have any main takeaways of the Falcons from your perspective?
I like their kicker.
Young Wei Koo.
Young Wei Koo, I still remember him taking a Zin from someone at training camp and just popping it in, didn't even care to like check what was in it, knowing that if he blows a substance abuse or something like that type of drug test, then sorry to all his millions. But I don't know if they pick kickers that much actually, but they might, and they probably should after 58-yard winners at the end of the game. Certainly, I'm sure more than $1 million changed hand on that result end of game,
Yeah.
as opposed to the Saints money line players. But with that said, I don't trust the Falcons. I think Drake London is probably the most overrated fantasy player in the history of fantasy, which is saying something because there's been a lot of those out there. And also maybe not as overrated as Josh Rosen getting picked in the first round, which is kind of a real little bit of a a stray bullet caught by Mr. Rosen as they showed all the 2018 class of quarterbacks, and everyone's excelling except he's in business school at Wharton. So
Hey,
pretty
that's not
rough,
a bad
but
fallback.
I'm sure he'll do fine.
Yeah.
With that said, I think the Bucks can score, and I think that they do. I mean, clearly they have defensive problems, but the loss of the Broncos, I don't think the Broncos scored an offensive touchdown. Or at least there wasn't a passing touchdown from Bo Nix. So maybe that's one of those games we look at the end of the year and like, how did that happen? Type thing. Of course, the Ravens losing the Raiders seems like one of those, but I think from my perspective, the Bucks can score. The Falcons, I'm not sure that they can, and that makes a favorite at home on Thursday night, which has been, I think, pretty good to favorite so far this season. That certainly helps the Falcons, but and I don't think you can make them an underdog here. So I don't know where this number is moving anywhere closer to pick them than I think we're really seeing a lot of money coming in on Tampa. But I also wonder if this Thursday night football under streak is ever going to die because like it was pretty close. We've seen missed field goals the last couple weeks that have swung either first half totals or full games. And while kickers are making more field goals than they ever have in history, it seems 43 and a half points. I mean, years ago, NFL, that's like a tiny total. Now I think anything over 40 feels like you're really having to climb uphill at this point. Uh,
Yeah.
do you have a feeling on where you want to go with this game? I know it's Tuesday night early, so we'll see what happens with injury reports and such. But do you have
Yeah.
an interest?
I mean, I'm a buyer in the Bucks. I think that it was a situational spot with Denver coming off that win against Detroit. They really put a lot into that. Um, and I think most of the market was surprised just because of the amount of injuries that they had going
Yes.
into that game, and then obviously just dominating the Eagles. So you want to keep an eye on the injury report. Vita Vea, looking at the report for this week, limited participant. He obviously played on Sunday. Kalijah Cansey has not practiced this week. Offensive line is healthier. And Antoine Winfield, the safety, one of the better safeties, he has not participated so far. So um, they did get a little bit healthier in that Philly game. Let's see, what we're looking at. This probably is tomorrow's going to obviously be our guess, but they're doing walkthroughs for most of this week, so we really won't know until Tuesday or till Thursday, closer to kick.
With inactives. Yeah, and honestly, it's a really short week. That always benefits the home team. I do think
Yeah,
in division matchup, I feel like they don't usually do Thursday nights in division, but I guess they did last week. Maybe they're
yeah,
doing it
last
all
week.
the time now. I feel like that's a huge advantage to Atlanta. Maybe it's enough to make them a favorite here, but I don't even know that I want to lay a 1.5, which is basically pick the winner.
Let's
For
find another under, Griffin. Let's just go. Let's keep riding it.
I mean, streaks end only once and could live forever. We'll move to Sunday to I guess a tea party game, if you will. The New York Jets visit the Minnesota Vikings in good old London town. The Vikings a 2.5 point favorite right now with all the juice. It was as high as 3 earlier in the week. Now back down to 2.5. Total's 42, or excuse me, 40 and a half on this one. Looking at the wrong game. We'll say that one more time. Vikings minus 2.5 with all the juice. Over under is 40 and a half right now.
Well, hey, we thought the Jets were gonna be the one of the better defenses, and they're still pretty good. But the Vikings have been, I think, the best defense in the league so far. Top five in turnover margin, top five in all the simple stats that you could look at in terms of defense. Top five in getting after the quarterback. Brian Flores, I don't. Sometimes a coordinator can lose it at some point, in his career, but Brian Flores has really turned this thing into a machine. And we saw what a good Broncos defense did to the Jets. I'm, I
I mean, Aaron
think
Rodgers is still limping from it, I think.
he's on the injury report. We'll see what happens there. They to me, Garrett Wilson, I've watched that wide receiver since high school, and he was an electric athlete. This is not meant to be a dig, but I did feel like at times, even at Ohio State, he kind of disappeared. He always had Chris Olave with him, always felt like he was 1B within the offense. And now we're looking at him as like the 1A target for Aaron Rodgers, and it's been a no-show.
Wait,
Um,
you mean the 1A is Alan Lazard?
yes, I was talking. Do you know, are you joking now? I see what you're saying. I got you. I got you.
I
That's
mean, come on, Alan Lazard. He's the go-to guy. He's who throws in the end zone. I mean, if you drafted Garrett Wilson's like end of the first round in fantasy football this year, you're dying for an Alan Lazard little tag team action there. Yeah, I
maybe
see your
Devontae Adams will come in and save the day.
I
Um,
mean, yeah, we'll see. I mean, the Jets, unfortunately, when they take losses like that to the Broncos, which I mean, the Broncos did everything they could to give that game away at the end, missing a long field goal, which basically put the Jets a few yards from their own field goal range, and of course, they missed too. Legatron, Greg the Leg, certainly not the same as Greg Olson back in the day on the seventh floor crew in Miami. I got to say, the this does the price seem cheap to you? 2.5. It is a neutral field, so that
yeah,
certainly means something. And I'm sure playing at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, it's going to be very slippery, similar to what we saw in Brazil, because a soccer stadium is not the same as an NFL stadium. It just
no,
isn't. I do think the turf's gonna be a lot better than in Frankfurt, Germany, which is like the worst soccer pitch in the world. I can't believe they're gonna go back there and play NFL games again this season, but I guess Guten Tag for that. In terms of this price right now, I mean, we've seen three, it's back down to 2.5, very juiced at the moment. Do you expect that it to hit back to three? Because certainly juice is pointing like it's stuck between those two numbers.
yeah, but I think most of like the people that are really moving the market in the NFL, like early in, I every single week we've seen Jets money come in. You know, we talked last week, it was at 7.5, and that thing gets all the way out to 9.5, close to, before some buyback there. So I wouldn't, it does seem cheap, but like I don't want to get into this whole mind game of, what am I missing here type. I think you and I, when we were talking about the Packers Vikings game, kind of felt like, okay, this feels somewhat, and I think that three was baked in with Jordan Love playing, but like it to me, like I don't know why you would go away from what the Vikings are doing. They've proven to be a good team on both sides of the ball. I think you're trying to get cute here if you're back in the Jets at below three.
Yeah, I also think probably worth about 15 points is a Sam Darnold revenge game, or the memory of him saying it's like I'm seeing freaking ghosts out there. And then
Yeah.
I remember, I think Kyle Van Noy, now one of the top rated PFF linebackers for the Ravens, but playing for the Patriots at the time, I think if I remember correctly, he's like he really said that like on camera and people heard that. What? Uh,
Yeah.
I'm pretty interested in Minnesota. I think they do get back to 3 points. I've had certainly a spotty record in London in my history, but I gotta say it's usually because I'm backing an underdog that I feel like is getting too many points. I feel like this number's short. I don't think it really could be much higher than three, to be fair, just based on Jets love, Aaron Rodgers respect, and the Jets defense. But Robert Saleh really has proven to me that he has no idea what he's doing at this point in his career. So I don't see that changing. And Sam Darnold, I mean, maybe the Jets are finally the ones to get some pressure, but I feel like Brian Flores, say what you want about being out of the game for a little while, but I think he basically, like when you sue the NFL for discrimination, I think that will happen for a little while. And I feel like he's just picked up right where he left off. We move now to Sunday Night Football. We'll circle back to some Sunday games as we do our six pack, but we're going through the main standalone bright light games before we get back to a couple of the smaller ones that A_Snicker and I want to talk about. And I'm not sure there's a bigger one than this one. We'll go to the Dallas Cowboys visiting the Pittsburgh Steelers. Currently, the Steelers are 2.5 point favorite. Total is 43.
Oh, where should we start with the Cowboys? You know what? I actually think like the market is pretty good on where the Cowboys are at right now. Um,
Yeah.
I yeah, like I feel like there's not a lot of wiggle room there. Justin Fields is going to be the quarterback, it seems like, for the next little while, until or unless he messes up for the Steelers. But the Steelers really aren't built for an offense. Um, it was a weird game in Indianapolis. I was thinking there once Anthony Richardson went out and it was Joe Flacco, I was like, oh, is this the time to live bet the Colts? Because instantly to me, I'm like, okay, I'm making an upgrade in the Colts once Flacco goes in. But it was a rough spot, a confusing spot to me to see the Steelers defense struggle so much against that team. I think
Well,
getting
you could
back
say they
Cole,
game plan for a guy that can run, and Joe Flacco came in and was like, "Oh, get ready for downfield passing," which I think, I mean, part of my underplay and my loser on last week's best bets was my thought that we had two quarterbacks that weren't going to be able to throw the football. Anthony
yeah.
Richardson still has a long way to go. Justin Fields has proven it. I still think Justin Fields is a decent quarterback because he's so dynamic with his ability to run. If he does hit a target, usually someone's open because there always is a spy, and I feel like there's just never enough defensive backs to cover his receivers. But keep going with your
That,
thought. I'm curious because I mean, the Cowboys were right around the number at the Giants on Thursday Night Football last week. Another missed field goal. Really, Brandon Aubrey finally missed one the first time in it feel like his life. He's even good at onside kicks. It's amazing his efficiency in every category as a kicker. Friends with also whatever the guy with all the face tattoos too.
oh, Post Malone.
Post Malone. Yeah, there we go. He's a
There
posty
you go.
guy. Post-it note. I feel like the Cowboys, I mean, they're always gonna get bet, but they're playing the Steelers who always get bet. So it's like, which public team is gonna
Yeah.
take over the money here? And I would think it's the Steelers at home, though this number has fallen from, or excuse me, has climbed from 1.5 point favorites to Steelers to 2.5. Yes, we have 3 extra days for the Cowboys to get ready for this game, but that's not going to make Zeke 6 years younger, nor is it going to make whatever the heck is playing quarterback with all the money and all the receiver with all the money start to play like they actually are worth it.
Well, I think our feelings about the Cowboys, I feel like we've talked about them every week, but and we also, you need a fact, like Michael Parsons will not be healthy. He can't play. DeMarcus Lawrence also out for two
Yep.
months. Parsons probably out for at least a month, probably 6 weeks more likely. Those were the only two good things about the defense that they had. We talked last week about the kind of the front runner mentality where the Cowboys defense was able to just like pin their ears back and get to the pass rusher or get to the quarterback. Now they don't even have pass rushers to get to the quarterback. It's unless Mike Zimmer turns into like a decade ago Mike Zimmer with some sort of defensive masterpiece, the pieces just aren't there. I'm not really even going to try to take a dig at Zimmer as a coordinator. It's just like the pieces aren't there. They got gutted in the offseason and now they're dealing with injuries. Like I think that they're going to make pretty much every offense look pretty good this year. Browns don't count. That's a whole different situation. And then the offense itself is how often can you rely on just Dak to CeeDee Lamb, because that's really the only connection there is. They're going to try to keep pushing Rico Dowdle as the starting running back. There's just not a lot of other options there. They neglected and didn't pick up really anything in the offseason, and you're seeing that now.
Yeah, I don't even think the Dak to CeeDee Lamb connection. It feels like it's one of the dart trains that has been off the tracks for 6 or more hours. I just feel like to me the Steelers, yeah, their offense is ugly. They can't really throw the ball, but the Cowboys have been a sieve defensively stopping the run. So this is a perfect matchup, I think, for Pittsburgh. Yeah, they might win by 2 points, but I'll pay to see it. I'm pretty interested in the Steelers on Sunday night. We'll move to Monday night, then circle back to our picks that each of us want to talk about on Sunday. But the New Orleans Saints, a 5 point underdog on the road at the Chiefs. Total is 42 for Monday Night Football.
Can we have like a real conversation about the Chiefs and their offense?
I would love to.
Because like
That's what the Betting the Pitch podcast network is for. Real conversations that try to make you money.
I
That's what
this offense isn't it hasn't been good for 2 seasons now, basically.
maybe longer because every second half of the season before that, they were blowing 20-point leads and not covering the spread. So I would argue against the spread that offense has been pedestrian, especially considered versus expectations.
I mean, you could also I was scrolling through you have to go into like the teens to find Patrick Mahomes as a fantasy quarterback. Think about it like in how high someone might draft him because of his name, or in an auction league, how much someone might spend on him for the kind of production that he has. And now he's going to be missing Rashid Rice for probably the rest of the year. Hey, we're Xavier Worthy guys. That's my dude. But like some of the criticism about, oh, he only runs fast, it's not wrong.
I mean, he
He
has big
has
catching problems. What I remember from what I remember,
his hands were like they were not the best in college. Um, I mean that to me seems like the number one Devonte Adams target there. Like that's obviously all the fantasy gossip and everything about it. Does that really make sense? I don't know. You're gonna trade within the division, but this could be a chance. Maybe you start looking at those Travis Kelce props again because obviously last year, Mahomes just started hammering Kelsey with targets
in the
because that's
playoffs,
really
I
the
feel
only.
like when they're like, so Kelsey got hurt before the season, and that was an issue. But I feel like in the playoffs was when he was either healthy or when they decided, okay, now we can use him.
Yeah.
To me, maybe they don't have that luxury this year, and maybe I'm completely way off by saying that the Chiefs were just saving their changeup for later, trying to get through the
No, I
first
think
the order with a
yeah.
fastball. Excuse the baseball reference, but it is the playoffs started today, so I do feel like the Chiefs have more bullets in the chamber and have the best quarterback that just somehow finds a way to win. And it doesn't hurt when the refs are working for you every week as well. But I don't think that's possibly something we can count on. Taylor Swift isn't that relevant, not touring the world like she was last season
Well,
at least. Go ahead.
I think you're onto something. I know we've talked about this in reference to the 49ers as well. Kind of it's a long season, saving your best players for when it matters most. I think that the Chiefs have reached that level of zen. They're 4-0 with what they got right now. And what they do have is a really, really strong defense. Steve Spagnuolo, one of my favorite defensive coordinators, like he's the dude, and that system works perfectly. I don't know if it's like a Chiefs mystique, if it's just the reputation, them morphing into like this unbeatable kind of football god type where teams kind of shrivel when they face them or kind of get out of their own element or get out of the game plan. But Chris Jones and that pass rush is awesome to watch. And really, I think the defense led the way last year and it's leading the way this year as well. I know we're just really hitting on the Chiefs here. The Saints have come back down to earth after their first two wins. When you look at who they played in those first two games, and kind of makes sense that they were able to put up that many points. But I do think Alvin Kamara is going to be that guy's looking for his final contract. This is the last year of his deal. He's looking to get paid one last time in the NFL, and
They
that
are
that will
certainly
motivate
using
anybody.
him. They are using him like he has no more contract value left to the
And
Saints.
that's but I think it works both ways. Like, okay, this may be the last time we get anything out of you, so we're going to give you 20 plus touches. But also, he's looking to get that one last payday. I don't think that's going to stop him. Um, and so it's a contrast of styles to me. But like at 5, my initial lean was to take the Saints because I feel like we're going to see the Chiefs offense like we saw for most of last regular season, or one that kind of spurts and stalls um, and just isn't it. What do
Okay,
you think?
So Chiefs this year covered the spread in the opener against the Ravens. We're pretty fortunate that Isaiah Likely's right or left foot landed
Yeah.
on the white. Had no business beating the Bengals, I don't think, but came back and won there. Did not cover the spread after covering the opener, and then covered the spread at Atlanta. Didn't seem to deserve it to me. That was a game that felt like they stole, but by enough to cover. A lot of Falcons coaching problems. Stop me if you ever heard that
Well,
before.
those the pass interference that didn't happen in the end zone in the fourth quarter too.
Uh, exactly. And then the Chargers last week were trailing for what felt like the whole game to me. At least we're not good against the spread and didn't look great, but covered some numbers last week. Didn't probably cover the
You.
close.
Yep.
But so that's all very interesting to me. Feels like we've seen the story for a long time, and I feel like there's no real change there. My big thing is if you're back in the Saints here, you're taking only 5 points on the road at Arrowhead in a night game with Derek Carr, who, I mean, I'm still amazed from that Saints Eagles game at home a couple weeks ago that they were getting 2 yards of carry, it felt like, and we're still just pounding Alvin Kamara. Maybe they hate him. Maybe they feel like shamed from the guy beat up out of a Las Vegas casino or whatever 15 years ago when he was still with the franchise. But to me, I feel like the Saints are just always choosing the wrong decision, which is to be conservative, to not let Derek Carr cook. maybe for good reason because he's not great and not really even good. But one thing I've seen from Carr is that he's really good at protecting the football, and that's something that I feel like they should trust him more to throw it because he's only going to check down. That's like what he does. To me, like maybe the Chiefs are going to stumble every game this season, and it's just going to end up in a playoff run to the third straight Super Bowl. I just don't think I got any sort of. I mean, maybe I'm just. I think most people know I'm kind of fine with underdogs. I don't think I could touch anywhere near this Saints number until I get a
Oh,
touchdown, and I don't think that's coming, especially based on this number where it is today. As we record this Tuesday, October 1st at 10:18 Central Time here in the beautiful Dallas, Texas, and Austin, Texas below me. Uh,
well,
good.
I mean, we talked about it to start here with the Falcons game. The two awful mistakes. One of them, okay, one of them it goes directly into your point about Derek Carr. The other one, you can't handicap for Rashid Shaheed trying to field a punt at his own 7 yard line.
Yeah, yeah.
It changed the game. If I think we're having a much different conversation, and probably we're looking at a different number. I would say four. Although I understand 4 to 5. Who gives a who cares? I want to keep this a family friendly
Thank you.
podcast.
Thank you. Yes. Yes. We are teaching young children not to swear, just to put their life savings on the Saints on a Monday night football game.
I don't want that either.
Okay.
I don't want that either.
Just for clarification.
I just I think that the Saints are more buttoned up. I think that they're reading through, following press conferences throughout the first 4 weeks, like it does feel different with them compared to previous years where it just became it became a mess 4 or 5 weeks in, and Derek Carr is walking after another interception, screaming at who knows who. And I'm like, dude, it's you. You're the problem.
When Mike Olave, or when Chris Olave stops on a route and then he lights him up as a whatever the 13 Michael Thomas is sitting on the sideline being like, why haven't I played in the last 2 years?
What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, more power to you if you're willing to back the Saints here. I could certainly see the Chiefs just kind of playing with their food, as you like to say, last year's podcast.
Yeah.
Maybe that happens, but I feel like five's not enough for me, and I think I'd only really want to look at under just because
Yeah, you're probably right.
I feel like there's very little offense to speak of on either of these two teams, despite Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce both doing podcasts worth slightly more in valuation than the Betting the Pitch Podcast Network,
Not
unfortunately.
much. Not
Only
much.
for a few more days.
Yeah.
We'll move to our, I guess, our last picks, our snake draft on what other games we want to talk about. We covered the four standalone games, including a Sunday morning across the pond in London town. Get your tea and crumpets, your English breakfast, or whatever you're doing, or get off of your bachelor party ferry and hope you don't vomit on the way to the airport, like @A_Schnicker and I will do next weekend.
I hope
Uh,
I just make it to the airport. That's the goal.
well, I mean, if I get stuck in LA, LA has him now. I'll leave it up to you to pick which game you want to discuss on this Sunday card. You can pick any one that we haven't discussed so far because we
All
covered
right.
everything else.
Let's go to an AFC North showdown.
Ooh.
The Ravens at the Cincinnati Bengals.
Well, a little bit less sexy than we all expected, considering the Bengals' tough start to the season. Probably deserved an upset victory on the road at Arrowhead in Kansas City, where they've. I think it's probably fair to say that Joe Burrow has had Patrick Mahomes' number in his NFL
Yeah.
starts. I don't, obviously, they didn't play each other in college, I don't think. But Ravens a 2.5 point favorite, all the juice right now on the Ravens side. So maybe we see this climb back up to 3. I'm not sure if it was there just yet since I've been watching it, but it looks like. I guess it looks like it was even higher than that. Look ahead numbers had this as the Ravens only a 1 point favorite, which looked very interesting to me. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
The Bengals 2.5 point underdog total is 50 on this one, which is pretty high. I think speaks to I don't know, a sieve of a Cincinnati Bengals defense so far, which is the reason why they started the year off slowly, though that seems to be a Burrow thing as we've noticed. I think the Ravens can't probably be worth or valued any higher than after smacking a really good Buffalo Bills team on Sunday Night Football. I know it was a winner for @A_Schnicker and also was my best bet winner on pregame. So that was good Sunday for both of us, or Sunday night, that is. Maybe things are different if Derrick Henry doesn't take the first carry of the game for 87 yards for a touchdown. But I mean, that's certainly a thing that you have to worry about. And I don't know necessarily, maybe the Bengals will be a little bit more conservative and try to stop those big running plays. But to me, I was pretty concerned, even with a play on the Ravens on Sunday, was that they might struggle to block the Bills. That didn't seem to be a problem. I feel like the Bengals will be less of a problem. I feel like the AFC North is real, and in division games are tough to handicap. That's where the underdogs, I think, bark the loudest.
Yeah.
From a Ravens perspective, this is a game that they should be able to win, expect they will win. And I think the Cincinnati Bengals, it's huge they got to win over a really bad Carolina team that's beaten a no pulse Raiders so far, with players making business decisions and their coach reminding the media of that and all of us afterwards as well. So I don't know what it would take for me to back Cincinnati here, but you're really heavy on a Cincinnati NFL early crowd. Not sure how much that matters, or really just in division, these teams know each other well, and then playing really tight games throughout the years, and AFC North teams tending to beat up on better AFC North teams.
Yeah. Here's what we've I think is pretty common knowledge through 4 weeks of the season. The Bengals defense is terrible. They're one of the worst rush defenses in the league, and they're going up against the absolute best rushing offense in the league
Right.
with, and not just a normal dynamic type of run game like Todd Monken's style of offense with misdirection. It's using every kind of weapon as a running back is a pretty scary proposition. But I also think like that's going to be the conversation that you're going to see on NFL Network. And it's going to kind of resonate into this almost echo chamber of just we already know the result that the Bengals are going to just get smoked. But what you're talking about with this division matchup and the Bengals slow start to the year, um, I'm looking, we're looking at it's plus you can get it at even money at plus 2.5. Like
You can buy to three very
I,
cheaply if you're
I
looking
think you
back.
might be able to get there organically.
Yes,
Um,
would agree. Yeah, that's where I would expect.
and I think you and I may be on that ferry back to the actual LA port. I may be trying to convince you into if we can get a three, convince you into a Bengals pick here.
I'm
But
looking forward to it. I
that
mean,
and it may be one we don't even want to watch. You just kind of you set it and then you don't look at it and then you go back, later in the week and watch. I feel like that's usually healthier for my mental being anyway.
well, I prefer to watch the 98th minute penalty kick that's awarded with no
Yeah,
reason
I don't know how you
in
do
the
that to yourself.
soccer world. I do like to see the onside kick punt that's not caught and then place the 10-yard line with a fourth down and goal touchdown run to kill
What was
the
that?
Titans under on Monday Night Football last night. Uh, good thing I just really don't feel like breaking my mother's iPad, or else that thing would have been long gone.
Can't do that.
I feel like this does get to three. I'm still not sure I want it even there.
All
Yeah,
right.
the spot has been bad for the Ravens before. I'm not advocating a Baltimore bet. I think this would be one of the few games where I'm just going to sit back and watch and root for at _Snickers Cincinnati ticket. Though he doesn't have it yet.
I don't have it yet.
I think he's gonna have it. I think based on what I'm seeing, and we've done this podcast now 2 years. I've known you for probably 20 or 15, or it feels like
Yeah.
20 based on the time we spent together. So, in a good way. I'll go for the game I want to talk about is the Buffalo Bills, the Houston Texans, also at
Mm.
1 o'clock Eastern time window, noon in God's time, 9 or 10 a.m. East, Pacific time. Bills 1 point favorite at Houston, total 47.5.
Well, to me, it's an injury type game for the Bills. I think that most people were jumping on the Ravens. Yeah, we talked about some of the injuries with the Ravens, but the Bills are just crushed in the secondary. I had concerns about their secondary going into the year, and they lose Taylor Rapp during that game. Linebacker core is still really beat up. And I also just think if we go back and look at Buffalo's results, yes, they were dominating. They were winning. Like the Cardinals game wasn't a blowout, but they were winning emphatically. But then you start looking at who they beat, and we had this conversation yesterday about the Lions and Seahawks, and you were right. But I'm just starting to like this was a 9-win team in my opinion, maybe a 10-win team, and they come out really hot, and now I feel like we're starting to see where they're actually we're at. Meanwhile, the Texans haven't really been overly impressive. What are you thinking with this one?
Well, the Texans were one of those teams that had a fairly low over-under that I feel like everyone and their brother, mother, whoever bets in the family listens to Betting the Pitch on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and on YouTube at @the_Real_G Warner. I feel like they were all being like, okay, the Texans had a great run, looked good in the playoffs. Only 9.5. They're definitely getting to 10 wins. But let's remember that they barely limped in the playoffs last year, and I greatly out exceeded expectations, got new uniforms. So clearly the ownership actually cares what they look like on the pitch, excuse me, on the field. But so that all looks good. I think my question is the Texans who haven't really lived up to expectations, and how are they going to stop Josh Allen? Because he is so scary to me. You could argue that the no blitz strategy is maybe a good way to make Josh Allen try to beat you with his arm, and he's going to take deep shots and take too many risks. But I just feel like, I mean, the Bills maybe as a favorite here is something you could look to back the Texans just as a home underdog, because I think that's of value in any sport, really. It's not a lot of insurance. You're only getting a point, but you never know. Could get a tie here or something like that, somehow win and the +1 in that situation. Low probability event, but possible. I don't know really. And that's kind of what I wanted to get your thoughts, because the
Hmm.
Bills look like a team I'm scared to fade at this point, though I think as a road favorite does say something. And now we'll move to our best bet portion of the show as we're kind of running up on time. We went 0-2 in our best bets last week, but we are 5-3 this season. We've had an incredible run over the past few years. I have not updated the stats so far, my bad, but it'll come out when I'm publishing this all. At @A_Schnicker, where do you want to go for your best bet for this week 5 NFL edition?
Let's continue the conversation we were just having. It's funny that you went to that game. Um, I don't think the Texans have been overly impressive. I think situationally, this is just a really tough spot for Buffalo. Back-to-back road games. You're playing two of the better teams. You're going to have an early start, and the defense. Like I love McDermott as a defensive mind. I feel like I've said that a lot this episode with all the defensive guys, but he's just not working with a lot of personnel. So I'm gonna take the Texans as a short favorite at home, and it's just kind of like a show me type game. Let's see what both these teams are really at, and what if the Texans are actually for real this year.
I like it. We now have just a little bit left in the show. I'll get to my best bet in a second. Of course, cut our 1 minute reel to go on Instagram at @the_Real_G Warner, also on YouTube as a YouTube short at @the_Real_G Warner. If you don't want the 6 pack of games discussed at length, which you should, because we've been crushing it for now 2 years, so you might as well spend your time in the right place. But make sure you check out at @the_Real_G Warner on YouTube, Instagram, and of course, our Betting the Pitch podcast network on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. And if you leave a 5-star review, that's huge for the search rankings. It's time for the ultimate best bet. So I'll get into it right now. Hey, this is the @real_G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. This is the Betting the Pitch NFL edition, the best bet. We go through 6 games every week, Tuesday night, me and at @A_Schnicker on Twitter. We go through all the standalone games. We pick 2 of our own that we like, and then we give you best bets. We're 5-3 so far this season, coming off an 0-2. So we were 5-1. Unfortunately, not as much credit for that, but we're going to continue to go in the right direction and try to make you all some money while we're making some money ourselves. At @A_Schnicker just gave you the Houston Texans a 1-point underdog at home to the Buffalo Bills on Sunday, October 6th. For my best bet on the @Real_G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube, I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings, a 2.5-point favorite in the early London game. I just don't really see it for the Jets. I think Brian Flores is going to devise a really good plan for slowing down Aaron Rodgers. The Broncos did that last week, and I'm just not really a believer in what we've seen from the Jets so far. So take the Vikings -2.5 and the Texans +1 for this episode of Betting the Pitch NFL edition. And that'll do it for this episode. Thanks you all for tuning in. As I drop my phone, we will see you all next week, and hopefully we survive Catalina Island.